All right, good morning. Welcome to Intro to Statistics. So I'm your instructor. My name is Mark Vanensteel. Let's see. I originally came from Pennsylvania. I went to a community college when I got out of high school, much like many of you will. And I did that for a little bit and pretty much shored up a lot of the subjects that I didn't do so well in high school, like English. I got a lot of friends that did not really facilitate a healthy academic career. So after a little while of doing that, I made a couple of other friends who decided that we needed to leave. This is before the internet, looked up all the schools in the country. We found the cheapest one. We found that was New Mexico Tech. We threw everything in a truck that we rented and drove out here, and that's where I went to school and got my undergraduate. So stayed there for another 2 years after that to get my graduate degree. So I ended up majoring in math. My master's is in something called operations research, which is a fancy kind of math, but it's just like logistics and like how do I get from point A to point B the best way. That's what that is. Um, after I finished graduate school, I worked for a company called Ball Aerospace. Ball is like if you have relatives who do canning, probably they do their canning in something called Ball jars. That's the same company. One day, Ball decided that they needed to find better glass for their canning jars. In their quest to find better glass, they also discovered that the glass they were finding was really useful for camera lenses. And the thing that people do with camera lenses is put them on satellites. So that's what they went into next. My job for them involved shooting lasers at cameras and then quantifying the damage that happened. It sounds a lot neater than it actually was, but that's what I did for Ball. And then defense industry is what it is. So I ended up coming back to community college here, not to go to school, but since I have my master's degree, I decided to go teach. So that's who I am. That's my story of how I got here. Let me go ahead and take you on a little tour of the syllabus. There's not going to be a quiz or anything like that, but we have that going on. Let me share my screen. Okay, there we go. Are we sharing? We're sharing. Okay, so let's see what I was working on. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. All right, so just to kind of take you through the syllabus to see what's going on with everything. I'm not going to read this to you. You guys are quite capable of doing that. So if you weren't allowed to sign up for the class unless you had the prereqs. They're pretty good about fixing that now. Just pretty much what we have. We don't have any scheduled class meetings, so it's pretty much via internet, via videos like this. We won't be needing to interact. You won't need to come to a class meeting or anything like that at a scheduled time. I do have my office hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 10 in the morning, so you're welcome to come to that. And, we can do that. The textbook is in ALEKS. It's within the Brightspace shell. So where pretty much all of your homework, quizzes, and tests are going to be housed. So that's pretty much how you're interacting with the class. There is no need for you to come to campus to go take a test or anything like that. We're not doing that. So it's all done via Respondus, and that's how that works. Respondus will shut down your computer screen, so you only have if you only have the one computer screen, you won't be allowed to use other things. So if you're using like a calculator app, which there are links to them in the syllabus here, if you don't have a fancy calculator, you can go to the CNM library and check one out for I think 24 hours. So if you foresee the fact that you may be needing a actual calculator, because if you have a phone for your app, an app for your phone, that's probably what you're going to use. But if you feel the need that you might want to use an actual physical calculator just to make sure that you know how to do everything, I would go to check one out of the library before the day of the test, okay, just to practice with it so that you know what to do with what you're going to be doing with that. So just to make sure that you may need a calculator, but don't go out and buy one. The C&M library has them for you for the low price of giving them your student ID and them checking it out to you for 24 hours. So don't be late giving it back, but that's pretty much what we're doing with that. The class is run on Respondus, so we will be watching you. I don't have any kind of weird things about putting the camera on for you. I'm not trying to peer into your homes. If you're okay with walking into a Circle K, you're on camera there too. So that should be about the size of what that is for you. Okay, so don't stress over this more than walking into a Circle K for like being on camera there. Let's see here. Definitely recommend Firefox or Chrome to be able to do your stuff in because that's better. The Respondus is within the ALEKS thing. So as you go to take your first practice test, they will prompt you to go ahead and do that. So you don't have to download extra software or anything like that. I will let you guys read the student outcomes. I'm going to go ahead and do this because, yes, there we are. Okay, we have different course deadlines and policies. It's pretty quick. So if you decide like this isn't for me, drop it before January 27th, and you can get a refund. If you miss that drop date, you're in for the whole ride. And the next time you can drop is going to be March 28th, but you've already paid for the class at that point. Attendance policy. I will track your attendance via how are you doing in ALEKS? How are you doing on daily assignments? And are you keeping up with them? Okay. Once I start seeing you slip by about a week, actually 2 weeks, that's when I'm going to start reaching out to people to say, hey, are you still in this class? Please get caught up by this time or I will drop you. Okay. But you will get, I will reach out to you before I just go ahead and arbitrarily drop people. So I don't like to do that. It's like just waking up one morning to an email, you've been dropped. That's not fun. So let's do that. Let's see, course assignment. So let's see here. We have a couple of different kinds of problems that we do. And I'll warn you, stats is a class that is deceptively easy when we start because the first chapter are things like data types and the next chapter are things like how do we organize data and how do we graph it. And it's not the kind of graphs that you did in algebra. They're a lot easier. But I want to warn you that this does become a math class in a very, very quick kind of a way. So don't be lulled into a false sense of security because it's like, oh, the first 2 weeks for just reading. Yeah, they kind of are. And then after that, they start to ramp up and you get more and more and more with it. So please do yourself a favor and allocate the time for, okay, we're going to have to spend this much time on homework, this much time doing problems, this much time studying, just like a regular math class. Well, even if the first 2 weeks don't seem like they're going to be that hard. Okay, that it's very deceptive. And I don't want to say, well, this will be, a class you can just read through. I'm like, it's not that class. Okay, we do a lot of problems and you're going to be doing a lot of homework. So we have a couple of different things. We have daily exercises. I added these this semester because I noticed, and I know that students who take online classes, you pretty much save up all of your mental energy for math for one day of the week, and that's when you do it. And that's not good for long-term learning. So I want to try to keep up with having you do something every other day and do problems like that. It will take me a little bit to get those started because the first 2 weeks, again, they're kind of they're kind of slow as far as doing math. So daily exercises aren't really going to happen possibly the first week. They'll start ramping up when I can actually ask you a math question. Weekly quizzes, those are in ALEKS. Most of the ALEKS homework is set up so that you get unlimited tries. Not always, because some of the multiple choice questions, like if it's true or false, you only get one try to do it. Okay, they don't let you have 13 tries to figure out if it was true or false. Okay. But they ask, the ask for an example is on there. Show me an example. Look it up in the book. All of that's there. With weekly quizzes, those help things are not. You do not need to turn on Respondus for weekly quizzes. You just need to be able to do the problems without asking for help. Okay, and that's just kind of to make sure that you are getting what you need to out of the homework. And if you can't do the weekly quizzes without checking things, without consulting a lot of notes, like you need to practice a little bit more with the homework. You need to study a little bit more because you're not quite getting it. And when you get to an exam, you're going to realize like, oh shoot, I don't have those tools available to me anymore. And now it's a little bit too late for you to go back and learn how to do it. So I would urge you, take the weekly quizzes as a kind of a check as to, are you learning the information? Are you learning the stuff the way you should be learning it? Okay. Exams, those are in ALEKS, but they are also on the Respondus. Again, you don't have to come to class. You don't have to come to campus, rather. But it will have you turn on the camera and have you do it that way. Okay. You'll probably have to do a little bit of a check to make sure that your area is free and clear. Not like mine. I have a camera, but you'd have to get like a mirror and show around your workspace. Mine would be terrible because I've got all of my papers here. So you should have like a clear desk, when you're doing your work. And that way I'm not going to be looking at your desk to say, okay, you've got extra stuff there. So we can't really have that. Okay. And again, if I notice that people are like looking at the screen and then you're looking at that and you're constantly looking over to another computer, like I'll notice a little bit. Or if I notice like, hey, you're constantly looking down at your phone and looking up to answer, like that's, you can see that when I'm doing this, it's quite obvious that I'm looking down at a phone and that I'm not always paying attention to what's going on in the class or on the screen. So be aware that the camera will be on for you to do that. I don't save them for any kind of weird purposes. Like once it's over, that's it. But that's what we have for that. Final exam. Most of the time with your test, I schedule them for about a 5-day period so that you can schedule them like you want to take them on a time that's convenient for you. You don't have to take them at a certain time on a certain day. Like I left that, okay, there's going to be like a 5-day window for you to take it. Okay, so you'll know it's like, okay, about a week in advance, I'll put it up. You usually have a pre-test. You can go ahead and start studying that. And then when you take your exam, you can arrange the time that's convenient for you. Okay, so we could do that. Let's see. Yes, grading. There are discussions in the class, and I'm sorry for that. It was one of the wonderful, when we had our training programs for online classes, I did not like this particular spot of this, but they do come in handy for a class such as this, where there is a lot that we do have to talk about. So there is discussions. Homework is in ALEKS. Again, you have unlimited tries and all the little bells and whistles are on, so you can show me an example and do that. I warn you, don't rely on that too much. Okay, there's a point where it's like, if you're using show me an example for every problem, like I'll tell you, you don't know how to do that yet. You might want to save a couple of, save that homework and go back to it like another day and see if you can't do the problems without show me an example every time, because the tests are timed. And if you have to like go through an example and figure out how to do it for every one of those, you're not going to make it. So I would urge you, practice often. Don't always practice with the show me an example button. Try to turn that off occasionally. With the quizzes, that will not be there. The daily exercises, that's a thing you're going to take a picture of and show me what you did. But, again, I'm not policing whether you got help or not. Like you do those as you do those. Okay. With the exams, I will drop one of your exams and replace it with your final exam, provided your final exam is higher. Like if you end up with like, hey, I got 90, 90, 90, and then the final comes by would be a 50, which is very unlikely. That doesn't happen. I'm not going to take your 90 away and replace it with your 50. Okay. Most of the time, people do a little bit better with the final than they've done on any of the single exams. Exam 2 is the hardest, but usually that the final will be, because the final is comprehensive. So the stuff that you do at the beginning of the semester, you're like, okay, I got this on lock. I've got this. By the time exam 3 rolls around, you've done some of the stuff for exam 1 so many times, you could do it in your sleep. When you see that problem on your final, you're like, oh, this is a good feeling to be able to do that problem very quickly. So that's what we have for that. Later grades, this is the normal kind of a system that we have for the grades. I'm going to pretty much hold to this one. Let's see. Then we have a little bit of a schedule. So, our first test is going to be on week 5. So you got plenty of time to get started with it. Again, the first test, the first unit of this class is deceptively very, very easy. Okay. We get into a little bit of a problem. We get about, let's see, week 4 with measures of position. That's a little bit squirrely, but for the most part, this is very straightforward. Not a lot of calculations. Not a lot of things that you're really you shouldn't be pulling your hair out on doing any of these problems until you get to test 2, because chapter 6 and chapter 7 can be a little hairy for a lot of people. This is where it starts to get a little bit, you start getting into deeper water here. So it's very easy to start the class, but when we get to chapter 6, chapter 7, it starts to get kind of hard. Chapter 2 will probably be the hardest test, chapters 5 through 7. And then you might think, well, chapter 8's got to be harder than chapter 7. And after teaching this class multiple times, I'm going to tell you that students generally have an easier time with chapter 8 than they had with chapter 7. Chapter 9 is a little weird to start with, but once you start getting the hang of what you're doing, chapter 9 is about the same difficulty as chapter 8, which again is easier than chapter 7. Chapter 11, chapter 11, the formulas are kind of tough, but the calculator does all the heavy lifting for all of the formulas. You're not going to be calculating a huge formula by hand. Okay, the calculator takes care of that. We will show you how to use it, which buttons to press, how to get through all of that. And then chapter 4, which is weird that it's at the end, but chapter 4 doesn't really have anything to do with chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7. So it's kind of like an extra, hey, isn't this neat kind of a thing? So we put it at the end of the class rather than the beginning. This can get a little bit hard, but again, the calculator does all the heavy lifting for all the arithmetic. You are not responsible for doing a huge formula for this, okay? You might be dealing with parts of that formula and to put different things into the different pieces, but the calculator should be doing, like, if I give you a list of numbers and say, go ahead and do it, you're putting that list of numbers in the calculator and pressing a button to say, go ahead and do it. The hard part is interpreting what the result is. That's what I'll be asking you, because anybody can put these numbers into a calculator and say, go. What does it mean is the next question. Okay, so that's the problem with that. So that's pretty much the whole class in a nutshell for you. Again, don't be deceived by chapters 1 through 3. Yes, they're going to come off as like, this is a reading class. This is not a math class. Once you get to chapter 5, that's going to change. So realize that chapter 1, 2, and 3, reading for the most, well, chapter 1 and 2, reading for the most part. Chapter 3 is where we start to do arithmetic. Chapter 5 is where it's going to get a little bit difficult. 6 and 7 is where the real difficulty comes in. If you can make it past chapter 7, you got the class. You're good to go. Okay, it's not going to be too much of a rough ride after chapter 7. So that's how this class tends to go. So I'm going to say thank you very much for watching the video. Welcome to the class, and I wish everybody the best of luck and the best result they can possibly have for this semester. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions if you need to. All right, thank you.